And we're good to go.
Okay. Good evening. It is 5:30 p.m. on Wednesday, February 17th, 2021, and this is the regular meeting of the Sandpoint City Council. I now call to order. For the record, I am Mayor Shelby Ronstadt, presiding remotely. Also present and presiding remotely are Council Members Shannon Sherman and John Darling. Is John with us? Yes?
Mr. Mayor, yes.
Okay, great. Council members Kate McAllister and Andy Grote are present and attending in council chambers at City Hall, 1123 West Lake Street, Sandpoint, Idaho. Council members Deb Rule and Joel Espiro are absent this evening. We'll now rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. If everyone will please rise. And Kate, could you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I'd be honored to. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, before we proceed, I'd like to suggest that we postpone adoption of the Arts, Culture, and Historic Preservation Plan, which is on this evening's agenda, in order to provide additional time for review by the Kalispel tribe. I appreciate the opportunity for our two governments to work together on this very important plan, and thoroughly appreciate their enthusiasm in wanting to participate, and the city looks forward to further collaboration with the tribe on this effort. So at this time, I would entertain a motion to remove item 7B from the agenda.
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. This will be a roll call vote.
Councilwoman McAllister?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman? Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
We'll need to pause the meeting as Councilwoman Sherman is no longer in attendance, which means we do not have a quorum at the moment.
Okay. We will wait for her to rejoin us.
Jennifer, is Shannon contact anybody too?
Me. Yeah, she's trying to get it up. As soon as the electrician showed up, her internet went down.
Oh dear. I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording, Mr. Mayor, for now.
Okay.
And we're good.
Okay. There's a motion and a second to remove item 7B from the agenda. This will be a roll call vote.
Councilwoman McAllister?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman?
Yes.
Councilman Darling?
Yes.
Councilman Grote?
Motion passes. Are there any announcements from council? Any announcements from staff?
No, Mr. Mayor, not this evening.
Okay. We'll now proceed with the public forum portion of the meeting this evening, which gives the public the opportunity to address the city council and myself regarding items listed on the consent calendar or on any topic not listed on the agenda. Clerk, has anyone signed up to speak during the public forum this evening?
If there's anyone in the audience who would like to speak during public forum, please raise your hand, either here in chambers or on Zoom. No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, that concludes the public forum portion of the meeting. Next is the consent calendar. For the record, the total amount of bills is $1,518,699.25, reflecting $903,375.45 for regular payables and $615,323.80 for payroll. Are there any items council wishes to remove from the consent calendar? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion that the consent calendar be approved.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? This will be a roll call vote.
Councilwoman McAllister?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman?
Yes.
Councilman Darling?
Yes.
Councilman Grote?
Yes.
Motion passes. Following the presentation during council's February 3rd, 2021 meeting, under old business this evening is a proposed resolution accepting the draft water system master plan. City Engineer Dan Taddick will kick us off with a presentation. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Mayor Ronstadt. Good evening, Dan Taddick, City Engineer, here tonight to present the draft final of the 2020 Water System Master Plan. Ultimately, we're seeking council approval of the plan as presented and authorization to submit the plan to Idaho Department of Environmental Quality for agency review and approval. Just so you know, this document will come back to council for adoption once we get through the DEQ process. I also want to make sure you're aware that we are still making minor edits to the plan. Primarily that's in the capital spreadsheet and a few of the figures. We anticipate very minor edits, nothing changing substantially in terms of the overall dollars of the project. With me tonight presenting is Preston Love with Murray Smith is here in person, and Joe Foote is attending via Zoom as well. So what we're going to cover tonight is briefly touch on the purpose of the plan, summary of the findings, needs, and recommendations led by Preston, and then we'll also leave time for some questions at the end. So why develop a water system master plan? First and foremost, it was a city council strategic priority. That priority specifically was to development of comprehensive master plans for major city infrastructure, assets, and services. By evaluating our system, we also are able to assess the needs, both present and future. And this ultimately will serve as a guiding document for planning and budgeting purposes. That inherently means that the assumptions and prioritizations need to be regularly revisited over time based on growth and other factors. This is especially important when you're experiencing high growth like we are currently. And last but not least, it's time. Our most recent plan was completed in 2006, and there was a heavy focus in that plan with the Lake Water Treatment Plant, which was the big project on the horizon at that time. This plan had a greater emphasis on our distribution system, since that wasn't as covered in the prior plan. How we got to where we are today, we received a DEQ grant, the amount of $45,000 to assist with the plan development back in fiscal year 19. Murray Smith was awarded a contract at council in February of 19, following a request for qualifications and selection process. And just at last meeting, Amanda had presented this plan for council and public review. And here we are tonight to present the draft final in a little greater detail, ultimately before we submit to DEQ ourselves. And I guess with that, I'll turn it over to Preston to walk us through the specifics of the plan.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Yeah, as mentioned, I'm Preston Love with Murray Smith. I am excited to be here tonight to talk about the contents of the draft final water system master plan that we've been working very hard on. I'll be talking about general information on the plan, information on the water system, methodologies that we utilize for assessing the system, and then key findings and recommendations included in the plan. So the figure you see here is an illustration of the city's water service area. The city is unique in that it's a regional water provider. It provides water service to customers within the city limits, but also the cities of Kootenai and Pend Oreille. It also provides wholesale water to the Syringa Heights Water District and Northside Water Users Association, as well as the Edelweiss Village area in the northwest corner of the service area. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the existing system characteristics. At a high level, there is approximately 4,600 customers in the water system, constituting approximately 12,600 people. Historically, an average day demand in the system consists of production and supply of approximately 2 million gallons of water, with a max day demand of up to 4.6 million gallons. The existing water system, this figure here is called a hydraulic profile, and it's an illustration of the existing system components and facilities and an elevation view. So there's two main pressure zones in the existing water system. The main pressure zone, which constitutes the majority of the service area, is served by two different surface water treatment plants. There's the lake water treatment plant, which supplies water to the main zone from the Lake Pend Oreille raw water booster station, boosts water from the lake through the lake treatment plant and into a clear well, which is then boosted out to customers in the main pressure zone. There's also the Edelweiss Village pressure zone, which is an elevated zone in the northwest corner of the service area. The main pressure zone includes two existing active storage tanks, which provide storage for that zone, and a single booster station that boosts water from the main zone up to the Edelweiss Village zone. All of these facilities are interconnected with approximately 92 miles of distribution system mains. Also, as noted earlier, the main zone supplies wholesale water to the north side and Syringa service areas. So the system was assessed as part of this planning process in accordance with criterion that are defined in the Idaho Administrative Procedures Act. The IDAPA provides guidance and minimum criterion for effectively and reliably providing water service to customers. And the water system assessment included a review and analysis of the different system components, including supply, pumping, storage, and distribution system capacity for three different planning scenarios: the existing system, a 10-year planning scenario, and a 20-year future planning scenario. As mentioned, the IDAPA criteria included looking at existing water rights for the treatment plants, and then considering supply with respect to existing and future max day demands, looking at existing tank storage volumes, whether facilities have backup power to reliably function in the event of a power outage, looking at fire flow capacities throughout the distribution system, and maintaining reasonable pressures for residents, and then also looking at water quality for water that's produced and supplied to residents. So the existing system assessment consisted of two main components. The first was sort of a spreadsheet analysis that consisted of calculating and allocating existing water demands throughout the service area, and then using those demands to assess supply, pumping, and storage capacities for the 2 pressure zones in the system. We also evaluated existing water rights with respect to existing demands. And then the second was development of a hydraulic modeling tool that allowed us to evaluate system flows and pressures using different demand conditions, such as average day, max day, plus fire flow, and then peak hour demands. And then as part of the assessment, we identified existing system deficiencies, and those deficiencies were evaluated to determine different alternatives for improvements that address each. And considerations for those improvements included cost, constructability, and hydraulic benefit. So as part of the existing system assessment, we also conducted a walkthrough of each of the existing water system facilities to collect documentation on potential condition issues that were visible. City operations staff were also engaged throughout each facility walkthrough so that we could capture operations and maintenance concerns that are tied to facility condition. This photo was taken inside the Woodland Booster Pump Station, and it illustrates an example of mechanical piping and valving that's nearing the end of its useful life and in need of replacement. And then the city, so just to give a summary of the existing system assessment, the city does have 2 high quality water sources that meet the water quality criterion defined in the DAPA and by the federal regulations defined by the EPA. The majority of the existing system deficiencies consisted of not being able to meet minimum fire flow requirements as a result of having undersized or dead end water mains in the distribution system. There were also some condition issues that were noted during the assessments at Sand Creek Water Treatment Plant and at the Woodland Booster Station, as illustrated on the slide prior. Also, a couple items to note: the water system SCADA software is aging and nearing the end of its useful life, so that will eventually need to be replaced. There are also a few existing water mains that need replacement due to poor condition, having documented leaks recently that have been repaired. Also, there's approximately 32,000 linear feet of coal tar enamel line steel pipe in the system that could cause water taste and odor issues as the enamel deteriorates and mixes with the water. Also, the pipe is generally considered to have a shorter useful life than ductile iron or PVC, so replacement of this pipe was made a priority as part of this planning process. So for the future system assessments, 10 and 20 years, those planning periods were also assessed. For these scenarios, demand projections were developed based on anticipated growth within the service area as infill, as well as outside the existing service area. Future demands were calculated based on vacant parcels in the existing service area, but as well as considering potential development capacity within the city's area of city impact, or ACI. The ACI is illustrated in this figure with the green, red, and yellow shaded areas to the west and north of the service area. The different shadings indicate 3 different development capacities with those areas of the ACI that are nearer to the existing service area having a higher development capacity based on developable land and zoning. So the future assessment consisted of determining what projects are needed to meet these future demands that were calculated and supply these future areas and potential new customers. So the future assessment indicated that there were no additional deficiencies resulting from the increase in demands or new fire flow requirements. The focus on this future assessment was primarily identifying and evaluating feasible supply routes to extend existing water service into the ACI. As the distribution system mains continue to age and additional condition issues arise, an additional recommendation is to develop an annual pipe replacement program that would allow the city to build up funds to address future pipe replacement needs as they occur in the system. And then as part of the plan, a capital improvement plan was developed with projects that were prioritized and scheduled based on priority level, as shown in the first bullet. The high priority projects focused on addressing the most significant deficiencies and those deficiencies that have the largest impact on the water system. As mentioned, there are several projects that include upsizing an existing pipe or constructing a new pipe loop or constructing a alternative supply route to address existing fire flow deficiencies. There are also several projects that address condition issues and replacement of facilities that are nearing the end of their useful life. And then one last couple items to note is these projects are subject to annual updates and budget reviews, obviously, and as time passes and actual system growth is realized, it's recommended that the medium and low priority projects are refined and that the water system plan is reviewed and amended or updated in accordance with where this growth actually occurs in the system. This figure illustrates locations for the recommended improvement projects. I realize it's very small to see, but projects that are piping projects that are in red are the high priority improvement projects, and then yellow is medium, green is low. Also listed on this figure are the other improvement projects at the supply, storage, and booster pump facilities. There are also a few projects that are not pictured, such as updates to the water system plan on a 5 to 10 year basis, and then the annual pipe replacement program that's recommended. This table summarizes the high priority projects by type. There were 4 types that were included to differentiate between capital improvement projects for this plan. The first is condition. The condition projects, the high priority condition projects included some reservoir condition improvements at Syringa and Woodland, installing backup power for the lake water treatment plant and the intake at Lake Pend Oreille, numerous minor condition improvements at the Sand Creek diversion and water treatment plant, and then replacement of the Woodland booster pump station. The second type of improvement project was studies, consisting of water system plan update, and then the EPA mandated AWIA risk and resilience assessment and emergency response plan update, which will be due for the city in June this year. Also, geotechnical and structural evaluations for the upper and lower diversion dams at Little Sand Creek. And then the third category was pipe improvements. This consisted of 12 pipe replacement or new pipe projects to improve fire flow to various locations throughout the distribution system. Replacement of 3 existing water mains that are in poor condition and had a recent history of leaks. And then, of course, the Gooey Road water main extension project, which will be starting construction shortly. The fourth type of capital improvement was, as mentioned, the pipe replacement program. And so, yeah, to give a summary of the improvement projects for each of the planning periods, the total for years 1 to 5 was $9.4 million. Total for years 6 to 10 was $18.3 million. And then for years 11 through 20 was 2.8. As mentioned, the majority of the CIP is focused on piping improvements and increasing service reliability by addressing fire flow condition issues in the distribution system. Aside from these specific pipe improvement projects, it's recommended that, as mentioned, an annual fund is developed to address replacement needs in the distribution system, such as undersized or coal tar enamel line steel pipe. The amount that's budgeted is recommended to start out at $50,000 a year, just to build a reserve, but to increase that amount as you enter years 6 through 10 and 11 through 20 of the planning periods to expand on that fund. And it's anticipated that these pipe replacements are going to be needed more in this those future periods. So with that, I'll turn it back to Dan, who's going to talk about next steps.
Thanks, Preston. So we chatted about some of this before, but next steps include incorporating the comments, finalizing the plan for DEQ review and approval before bringing it back to council for final approval and adoption. Ultimately, the contents of this plan will be incorporated into a comprehensive rate study looking at our rates moving forward and how we pay for these capital needs. Preston pointed to this, and we spoke to it regarding the growth we're seeing and highlighting the importance of future updates and amendments to this plan and our hydraulic model as development occurs. Obviously, with the rate of growth we're seeing, it's the moment you pause to print the plan, it's almost like you're out of date already. So it's really important that we keep that up to date and consider, even when our ACI boundaries are redrawn, working with the county, which we're currently doing, that we perhaps evaluate at that time. Okay, are there any changes we need to look at on the plan? One other perhaps important recommendation to the plan is to look at perhaps a regional water plan. Preston spoke about the wholesale users and perhaps working with those wholesale users and looking closer at options for improving efficiency and quality of services is something that could be considered in the future. I just want to touch on again that this is intended to be a planning tool. It's certainly not prescriptive. Projects that are identified in years 6 through 10 may end up needing to be elevated in years 1 through 5 based on actual growth and where that demand is occurring. It could change based on another documented break and condition issues that we become aware of. So you got to look at this as a fluid guiding document, not a prescriptive plan. And I guess lastly, I just wanted to give kudos to our operators for the work they do. They care deeply about the work they do. They take a lot of pride in it, and obviously that's reflected in the quality of our water and also in our compliance record with regard to drinking water. So with that, that's all we prepared. We're happy to take any questions from council if we have any.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question. In just reading through some of it, so I was very curious about the ensuring meters are installed at public distribution locations. So are there other public locations that we don't have meters, and has the fairgrounds, I mean, why hasn't it been metered? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I can't speak to historically why. I know
Right.
it's a priority to move it forward. The fairgrounds is the only one I'm aware of.
Okay.
I think there might be, now that I say that, I think there might be some irrigation systems, or there may be, I think there may be something at City Beach. I'm talking before with our staff there that may not be metered. There may be few, but the fairgrounds is probably the most significant one that's not metered.
Just curious. Thank you.
Yeah, and this is just a question out of curiosity also, out of the study, the number of current water user accounts, approximately 82% are residential, 18% non-residential. However, the residential customers only use 49% of the total demand, with 51% non-residential customers using. So it just, could you expand on that and help me understand it a little bit better?
I would expect our users like Lighthouse,
Okay.
some people in
So
the
the non-residentials are also
Yes.
industrial.
Yes.
Okay.
So
Okay.
as well as your commercial customers, and a lot of commercial customers use irrigation for their landscaping and that sort of thing. So there's more to that than just the breakdown that you see.
Yeah, it just jumped out at me, and as I'm looking at non-resident, I'm like, what are you people doing when you're up here? So,
Doesn't make sense.
thank you, and thank you very much. And yeah, I really appreciate you giving the kudos to our operators also. They really are doing the very, very best for us with what it is that they've got right now. And it would be great for us to continue to provide them with a better working environment.
Well, and I failed to give kudos to our team as well, Murray Smith.
Yeah.
Don't want to forget about them. They did a great job, and we're good to work with through this plan development. So,
And I'm very proud we haven't had any violations from 2014 to 2019, so good for us.
I have a question.
Mr.
Can you-
Mayor,
Yes, go ahead, Councilor Sherman.
Thanks. I think I heard you say in the presentation that we needed to budget 50,000 per year in order to build up our reserves to meet the $30 million requirement over the next 20 years, or $9+ million in the first year. I was just curious how much we have set aside currently.
We're all looking at Sarah.
This will be presentation for next week at the end of the audit, but I have the numbers in front of me. The water capital reserve right now is at a little over $2 million. So this would be what I'm gathering as separate over and above designated fund and above that reserve that would be set up is how I'm reading this. And normally those are set up by a resolution. So we can talk through that if we want to at the next meeting in conjunction with the audit report, if you would like.
Okay, so you said we have 2 million in reserves now, and then we'd address the need for additional $50,000 a year in our advanced planning. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right.
Good question, Councilor, but it doesn't answer the question for me. How do we get to 9 million in the first 5 years by going from 2 million, adding 50,000 a year? That didn't make sense to me. Can you explain that?
Yeah, the sum of the capital projects amounted to 9 million. It wasn't just the 50,000 a year. The 50,000 is kind of the last little bit. That amounts to 250 out of the 9 million. The rest is in the rest of our system. I can back up a little bit actually.
Yeah, thanks.
It's this summary of projects that amounts to that 9.4.
Okay. So, by comparison, that's, close to $2 million a year over the next 5 years. And Sarah, is that roughly what we've been allocating for, maintenance and operations, or I guess system upgrades and improvements for the water system year by year?
No, I would think this would all be rolled into the rate studies that we will be doing. In addition to, in next week's presentation, we'll also have the water fund balance. That's not the capital reserve balance, but the water fund balance in general has a $10 million reserve. And I would recommend moving some of that over into capital reserve, but that will again be part of next week's discussion. That would be, going back, that would be taken into the rate study, as well as these reserves that we already have will also be taken into the rate study when they're doing that analysis.
Okay. And then Preston, I had a question too. What were you assuming for, what number were you using in projecting population growth and projecting that out to assess what your anticipated upgrades would be needed in the future?
That's a good question. I'm sorry to cut in, Preston. This was largely led by the city mayor. Linda Heiss, our very talented grants and performance management person, was really assisted with crunching the numbers and looking at our growth out into our ACI population projections. And what was evaluated was looking at current rates, considering future rates, and then projecting a density over into the ACI. So with the density that stepped down as you move further from the city. So as an example, the density was higher, closer to existing city limits, and reduced the further away to the west that you moved. So this graphic, I apologize for the scale. I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see, the different context areas that were applied. But generally speaking, context area 1.5 is this closest edge of city limits, and just based on topography, distance to the city, other factors like that, it was assumed to have a 8,600 square foot lots, I believe, single family construction. And then context area, if I can scroll, context area 1. This hatched area here was looked at as, again, about 10,000 square foot lots, so a little less density, but still of the scale, assuming that there's sewer service there as well. We're not down to 2.5 acres in your typical county development that requires septic. So higher density, closer, and then as you step away, we're looking at more of that rural 1 acre, 2.5 acre type growth development patterns. So those were the assumptions, and largely these were developed, I guess some time ago relative to how the overall plan came together. And this, again, accentuates our need to continue to revisit, how are we tracking relative to this plan, especially during these periods like we're experiencing now, and recalibrating. Do we need to modify our assumptions? Are the rates greater than what we assumed, less than what we assumed, and update the plan accordingly?
Okay, thank you. Council, any further? Yeah, go ahead.
If I may on that, for further information on that, in addition to looking at what the growth is in the ACI in terms of how we're tracking and monitoring the growth that we're experiencing, we keep internally a development tracker that includes both projects that we have applications for, as well as projects that are contemplated. And on a real-time basis, pretty much we are updating this population tracker and growth, because we've had a lot of conversations about our population cap as a resort city at 10,000. So as we're still anxiously awaiting for our 2020 census numbers, we've been tracking this very closely. But what I can say in terms of the population estimates that went into this plan, at that time, we knew that we were likely to see a development come through for the former University of Idaho property along Boyer and some of the other very large infill projects that we've seen. And so we calculated build out of those projects at the time that this master plan was being developed, and those population numbers were being developed for it. There was an initial estimate at the front end, and then we revisited it at the end as this plan was getting completed, just to make sure that we had kept up with developments that were anticipated.
Thank you, Jennifer. Council, any further questions? Okay. Let's see if I can return back to that. Okay, there's no further questions. Is there anyone in the public that would like to comment on this issue, Clerk?
If there's anyone in chambers or participating on Zoom who'd like to comment on this item, please raise your hand. I'm not seeing anyone, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I would entertain a motion to approve the resolution accepting the draft water system master plan. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? This will be a roll call vote.
Councilman Darling,
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman,
Yes.
Councilman Grote,
Yes.
Councilwoman McAllister.
Yes.
Motion passes. The first item under new business is a proposed ordinance creating a new Arts, Culture, and Historic Preservation Commission, which is one of the recommendations included in the Arts, Culture, and Historic Preservation Plan. City Administrator Jennifer Stapleton will provide a presentation for us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This ordinance before council for consideration sunsets our current Arts Commission as well as our current Historic Preservation Commission and forms a new combined Sandpoint Arts, Culture, and Historic Preservation Commission in accordance with the recommendation that is in the master plan. The Arts, Culture, and Historic Preservation Master Plan is presented on a couple of different occasions to the council. They specifically, in terms of actions recommended, membership on this commission, and I've made a couple of changes, and I'm going to see if I can blow this up from what was in the packet. Sorry, I got to move this around a little bit because I don't know if I'm going to be able to. I've got so much on the screen. Hopefully you can see it. I don't know if I can get the blow up I would like to get on here. I did make a couple of changes in response to feedback that I received after the packet went out from members of our current commissions, and most particularly Steve Garvin, thank you, who's the chair of our current Historic Preservation Commission. The changes, as noted, are under section 210.3, establishment and membership. To note, 2 individuals with a demonstrated interest in and commitment to historic preservation, at least one of whom represents the Bonner County Historical Society and Museum. As included in the draft master plan before council, it was a recommendation that it be 2 nonprofit historic organization leaders. And there was a concern that there may not be 2 eligible nonprofit organizations. So this allows for individual representation beyond just a nonprofit organization. In addition, the membership recommendation contained a recommendation that at least 2 members meet the U.S. Secretary of the Interior's professional qualification standards for historic preservation. This could potentially be an issue that there may not be 2 individuals who meet that criteria that are interested in serving, and potentially could put us in the situation where our commission can't meet. I reviewed ordinances adopted by other cities, including the city of Nampa, who has a combined commission similar to what was recommended. And many of them, including Nampa, had language that reflected the mayor shall endeavor to appoint, so that it left a caveat in case there was an interest, and it would allow appointment and the commission to commit to meet. But again, in speaking with the consultants, this is an important element relative to review grant applications for historic preservation projects. So those are a couple of the changes that I made since the packet was published. And again, the reason for moving forward with the ordinance for council consideration while we put the plan on hold is this gives us a path forward with our commissions. Our art commission in particular has not been meeting for the last few months, expecting adoption of the plan, a new commission, and moving forward. We're moving into budget time, and that commission historically has had planning to do relative to budget, particularly for the SURA budget. And this gives us a structure to begin recruitment for the combined commission. And at the time that the full plan comes before council, we can have hopefully recommendations for nominations to that commission so they can hit the ground running upon adoption of the plan.
Okay, does council have any questions?
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Thank you, Jennifer, because those were the 2 questions I was going to ask you.
Perfect.
Do we have 2 historic organizations, and do we have people who, so thank you. Great job.
Okay, council, anything else? Clerk, is there anyone from the public that would like to comment on this matter?
Anyone here who would like to comment on this issue? No, Mr. Mayor, I'm not seeing anyone.
Okay, I will read the title of the ordinance as follows. An ordinance of the City of Sandpoint, a municipal corporation of the state of Idaho, repealing Sandpoint City Code Title II, Chapter 3, Historic Preservation Commission, and Title II, Chapter 5, Arts Commission, and creating a new chapter under Title II, Chapter 10, Arts, Culture, and Historic Preservation Commission, providing for repeal and severability, and providing for publication and an effective date. I will entertain a motion that the ordinance pass its first reading by title only and the summary is approved. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded. This will be, well, is there any discussion? Hearing none, this will be a roll call vote.
Councilman Darling,
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman,
Yes.
Councilwoman McAllister,
Yes.
Councilman Groot.
Yes.
The ordinance passed its first reading by title only and the summary is approved. I would entertain a motion that the rules requiring 3 separate readings once in the ordinance's entirety be suspended and that the ordinance pass its second and third readings under suspension of the rules. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. This will be a roll call vote.
Councilwoman Sherman,
Yes.
Councilwoman McAllister,
Yes.
Councilman Groot,
Yes.
Councilman Darling.
Yes.
The motion passed and this ordinance is considered read, passed, and adopted under suspension of the rules. The last item on the agenda this evening is a quarterly financial report from City Treasurer and Finance Director Sarah Linz for fiscal year 2021 quarter ending December 31st, 2020. Sarah?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you share your response?
Thank you. Oh, you were interested in my stuff all night.
All right. Normally, each year, we try to present the first quarter along with the financial statements and the audit from the prior year. This year, due to COVID, there was a delay a little bit in the financial audit. So that will actually be on next week's or next council agenda. So we've decided to go ahead and push forward with the first quarter presentation. So going down to general fund, the personnel and maintenance and capital outlay. The personnel expenditures are 18.8% of budget right now through first quarter. The maintenance is at 16.6 and capital projects normally don't start going in general fund until the spring or the summer, basically our fourth quarter. So those are at only 8% right now. Compared to prior years, the wages and benefits, the blue line is the one you're looking at. That is the first quarter. And compared to, over the trending, we are a little bit under what we have been in the past years, but we're only about 1% under. This is due to we now on a 2-week or a bi-weekly pay period versus a semi-monthly pay period. What that does is depending on when that falls at year end, that depends on the accrual that's going to happen at the end of the year. So the last 2 years are a little bit below, but at the end of the year, you will see, as you'll see in the fourth quarter, the yellow line at the top, it evens out at the very end of the year. Same with M&O, it's looking good compared to prior years, right in line. Going down to all, this is also very general fund, again, all expenses, looking right in line with what's happened in the prior years. Going on to revenues for general fund, the one I wanted to point out, we will talk about, is the grants. Typically, this is at this time of the year is actually very low because grants are typically tied to our construction. However, as you will recall, in the budgeting that we had this year, we had the property tax that was levied. We took part of the governor's public safety initiative grant. And what that allowed us to do is to reduce property taxes to the homeowners of the city. And then basically that's a grant coming in from the state. Typically we receive all of our property taxes in the second and the fourth quarters of the year. We received the full amount of this property tax relief from the state in the first quarter. So that is trending high, as you'll see down here. You'll see our revenues, that blue line again, the first quarter is trending high to prior years. This will even out as we go across the throughout the year. We just received this lump sum in the first quarter versus the second and the fourth quarter. Any questions on that one? No. Moving on to special revenues and expenses. Okay, the special revenues expenses are on the top and the revenues are on the bottom. These are all looking very similar to prior years. The fiber optics, we had in the first quarter, we did have the construction that was, or the project that went to the community hall, that was grant related, so that you'll see that in the expenses and the revenues down below. And the capital projects, that is the impact fee fund. Nothing has happened in that yet this year. Rec fund, that is trending a little low on the revenue side. That's due to the rec programs not happening as they have in the past. And the rest of them, local option sales tax, I will get into that in a future slide. In the parks impact fee, that revenue is typically received, most of it is received actually in this quarter, second quarter, and that is due to the moorage at City Beach, or at the moorage, so that we'll see that coming in the second quarter. Enterprise funds, these are also looking very similar to prior years, revenues and expenses. The majority of our expenses for water and sewer are in our personnel and then maintenance and operations as for right now. The capital outlays will occur in this fourth quarter again. So those very little has been done on those capital outlay budgets. And then just showing again the water revenue and expenditure trending compared to prior years. Very similar, nothing to really note. Same with wastewater trending of revenue and expenditures. The local option tax, wanted to show this one. This is basically our last quarter of receiving this. We actually did trend high for this last quarter of compared to even last year. We received over about 410,000 in this final quarter compared to 347,000 that we received even last year. So we'll see the trend up again, and you will actually see that in this one too. Our resort city tax is actually higher than it's ever been in the first quarter as well. It was almost $75,000 in the first quarter, where last year was 60,000, and the prior 2 years before that were about 60,000 as well. So that's good news in that regard. Hopefully it keeps going. And other than that, that's the three biggest things I wanted to note were the resort city tax budget over, or the actuals over budget, and then also the revenues for the grant that we had for the property tax initiative. Any questions, comments? Again, as always, please, if you want me to add any graphs or anything additional in here, please let me know. There also is a link to what we have to publish for the quarterly report by the state. We have to publish it on our website, so that's a link to that. Basically outlines the same thing, with no graphs.
Great job, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah.
Okay.
Here, your future.
Sorry. Thank you, Sarah. Are there any other questions or comments from council? Okay, clerk, is there anyone from the public that would like to comment on this issue?
Anyone like to comment?
I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. If you'd please approach the podium and introduce yourself, sir. State whether or not you live in Sandpoint city limits.
Yeah, my name is Matt McDonald. I live in Sandpoint. You talked about the grant that came from the state, or the lump sum. How much was that?
It was a little under $1 million.
A little under $1 million. And then that eased the property tax for the local people here.
Yeah, that was all part of the levy that went out, and then so it reduces the property taxes to the homeowners.
Okay, and do you know how much it reduced it? Was it percentage or?
We have presented that in the budget. I'd have to go back and look at the
Okay.
exact, but it is out there, and if you want, I can send you an email later on that.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Clerk, is there anyone else that wants to speak from the public?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, that concludes our agenda this evening, and the meeting is now adjourned.